Beyond the Studio is produced and recorded at Round Rock Studio, the perfect space to bring your visual ideas to life. Round Rock Studio is a photography and production studio with a 20-foot by 20-foot cyclorama wall. The studio has built-in lights, essential grit gear, and even a client green room, setting you up for a successful shoot. Round Rock Studio also offers podcast recording in their state-of-the-art podcast room, including microphones, cameras, lights, and everything you need to get your podcast out into the world. Go to roundrock.studio for more information. Round Rock Studio, a place for creatives to be creative.
Today's guest on Beyond the Studio is Nate Strayer. Nate Strayer owns a 10,000 square foot virtual production studio called Stray Vista Studios. This is a very large studio that we're going to be talking about, so I'm very interested to hear his successes and how he manages all of that stress of owning such a large studio. And also, he's only 25 years old, so to be able to run something at that scale that he's running is quite amazing. He's also directed a feature film that kind of helped him get his start in this industry. So anyways, without further ado, here's my conversation with Nate Strayer. Nate, how you doing?
How's it going, man? Good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, man. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, this is gonna be fun. This is an awesome space.
Yeah, thanks. And I know it's quite the drive for you.
Yeah, a little bit.
Here. Yeah, at least it's not storming. It was pretty stormy yesterday.
Yeah, the hail yesterday is crazy.
Yeah.
Not used to that.
Cool. So you own Stray Vista, but before we get into Stray Vista, kind of tell me, like, where are you from and kind of what got you into this industry?
Yeah, man. I'm originally from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Through high school, was in Grand Rapids, and then I went to Full Sail University in Orlando, film school down there. And then from there, did a little time in Chicago, moved out to LA, did the directing music videos thing for a while until COVID hit. Once COVID hit, I ended up making my first feature film, super indie project. And then from there, kind of realized I don't really need to live in LA if the biggest thing I've done in my career so far was done outside of LA. So looked at other cities, looked at Nashville, Miami, Austin, fell in love with Austin right away. Live music scene, just like the city itself, it had enough of a film community where it would make sense for me as well. So moved out here as a writer. I was writing full time at that time, and then slowly things happened that we'll talk about, I'm sure, that led to starting up a studio, specifically virtual production.
Nice. And you made a feature. That's not an easy task.
Yeah, man. The feature was, I'll say this, I'm proud that I did it. I'm very proud of what the doors that it opened for me. And it's a decent little film, but it's definitely, when I was going to film school, when I was growing up wanting to be a filmmaker, it's not like what I wanted to debut with, because it is just an indie. We spent like 10 grand on it during production, and then we got like, from investors, after we showed the rough cut, we got like, I think $50K to finish it with post-production and stuff. So super small movie, sub $100K, but I'm super proud of it, man. And it got me the exposure I needed and the attention I needed to be able to start something up like Stray Vista. So
yeah,
it did its job.
It did its job. And you filmed it in COVID, which I'm sure had its difficulties.
Yeah, so we basically, my family owns a couple cabins on a lake in Michigan that they rent out, just like no air conditioning, just camping cabins kind of. And so during COVID, I flew up there, flew out a couple of my film friends from LA, and we shot this movie. We were like, we're going to be here for a little bit. We should shoot a short. We kind of started writing a short script, and then once we shot the short, it was like, okay, this seems like it's going to be more than the 2 weeks that the government was saying would be shut down for.
Yeah.
So we decided to kind of extend it. We reshot some of the stuff that we did for the short and just slowly pieced together over 45 shoot days. We did this, I think it's 85-minute feature film. And yeah, the rough cut got us money, which is super cool and super grateful and blessed to have gotten that. And then We ended up selling it to Tubi, so it's on Tubi right now. It's called Outlier. Yeah, super proud that happened, and it's a cool way to kind of kick off what has now become this career in the film industry.
Yeah. Were you able to apply what you had learned at Full Sail into this film?
Full Sail, I would say, is kind of like what it did for me was build the network. So everybody that worked on the film went to Full Sail. And there is a lot of knowledge I'm now realizing I have about the film industry that I wouldn't have had without Full Sail. But at the time, it's like when you're a director and you're kind of going to a school more for a crew, I was learning how to do C-stands. I was learning how to, wrangle cables and stuff. So I was a little bit worried at Full Sail that like what I was learning wouldn't apply as a director. But having been in the industry now for 6-7 years, it's like, okay, no, I needed to know this baseline stuff to be better at, what I'm trying to do in directing. So yeah, I would say Full Sail, number one, again, gave me my whole crew that I still work with today.
Yeah.
Number two, there's just a baseline knowledge of this industry that it taught me. So super happy with the education I got there for sure.
Yeah, and I've heard that before about college and film school, that it's really there for the networking.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it can teach you how to do a C-stand and like other stuff like that. And I went to, kind of a community college film
Where'd
school.
you go?
South Plains College
Okay.
in West Texas. A great community college nearby that does creative arts and music. And so I got my major in video production and music.
Nice.
And it was there. And so, yeah, I'm able to apply what I learned there, but ultimately it's about the networking.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, your network is
100%.
your net worth.
Yeah.
So,
2 of my employees are guys that I went to Full Sail with. Many of the freelancers that we hire for a lot of the productions I went to Full Sail with. So yeah, it's still to this day, like 6 years later, it's the most in common thing I have with most of the people I work with is that we met at Full Sail.
yeah,
So
that's great.
Yeah.
It's still paying off. Yeah, so after you did your feature, you sold it, and then you had a wild idea to start a studio. And of course, there's a bunch of steps that went along there before you opened up Stray Vista. But how did you kind of initially get the idea to open up a studio?
Well, like I said, I was writing full time. I would say the film industry in Austin is a little bit, it's big enough to have a career for sure, but it's small enough where getting into it is a little bit difficult because everybody has the one crew that they shoot with. They've got their clients. It's not like LA where there's something happening on every street corner and there's different avenues to get in. It's like there's the one core group of people making things in Austin, and you need to get into that core group in order to be in the industry out here. So it was a little different than LA where you could just start making stuff. Eventually you find your group of people because there's like 1,000 different groups.
Yeah.
So when I got here, I was writing full time, which is cool. I can do that remotely. I don't need to be out where my clients are. But I wanted to be on set again. So I was looking at just different options, getting some gear, because I think that that's probably the biggest way to get into the industry out here. It's either you know people and I didn't, or you have something more than your labor to offer. And so the guy I moved out here with, Joe Fela, he's now a rental house, Grip and Electric. He kind of started his little grip truck. It was just a small 1-ton truck to start. Now he's got,
What's his company?
Fela Production Rentals.
Okay.
So he and I moved from LA together to Austin. He was the DP on my feature.
Nice.
So he started with gear, with G&E gear, but as a DP who, was gaffing as well on that feature and gaffing in college and stuff, that made sense. As a director and writer, I was like, should I go get camera? What do I do to bring value outside of my labor so that I can get into the industry, be known by people, and start working? And the answer ended up being through, I guess you know him, Scott Lopez.
Yeah.
He bought a firehouse in Round Rock, close to where we are right now.
Yeah, like a mile away.
Yeah, crazy. And it had a big bay where they used to keep all the fire trucks and everything. And he called me one day. He and I were going to write something together. He had a show that he wanted to write. We didn't end up doing it, but through that, he knew about me. He knew I was a filmmaker. He had seen Outlier, I believe. And so he calls me up. He's like, hey, I've got this 2,500 square foot bay. It's got like 35-foot ceilings. Do you want to maybe come and see if it would be good for a studio? So I went out there, looked at that, and it just kind of opened up my mind to the possibility of like, oh, that's something I can do, bring to Austin. So didn't end up working out with him. He has built it, I believe. So that's cool that he was still able to do it. Yeah. But he and I kind of went different paths business-wise, and I went with this new idea in my head that he had put in my head, looking for money to do what I wanted to do, which was a little bit bigger, I think, than 2,500 square feet. I wanted to have, a dedicated space to build out really good support space. So what I was really looking for, rather than a bay attached to another business, was an empty shell, a big warehouse. So I ended up buying, with these investors, the same ones who invested in the movie. Mm-hmm. We ended up going and looking at a 5,000 square foot building just outside of Drip, still in Austin on 290. And we bought it. The architects we were talking to when we were looking at it, when we were in the buying phase, were like, yep, this is going to take like 3 months to get your permits. And then after we bought it, we went back to the architects on the day we were supposed to break ground. And we're like, hey, I know we're a little bit behind, but how are we looking on these permits? And they're like, oh, they just got pushed back 24 months. Oh so my gosh. We had this 5,000 square foot warehouse that was really derelict and not great. It's also right next to the 290 highway. So the plan was to use that as a mill and building space and have a little psych in there for MOS things, but we couldn't record sound there. But then there was a big hill, and underneath that was a bunch of land. I think we had about an acre. So we were going to basically use that hill. We're going to dig into it. It was like a 30-foot tall drop-off. So that would block all the sound. Even down there, you couldn't hear anything. And we're going to build our big 10,000 square foot virtual production stage down there. Problem was, it was going to take 24 months to even break ground. So we could have built that MOS psych, but we couldn't use sound. It wasn't going to be super, it wasn't going to make us any money. So what I ended up doing after a lot of stress, because I'm in like 7 figures of money with these investors, and I have to call them and say, hey, we can't do anything for 24 months, which is 2 years. That's crazy to have an investment not only not make money, but lose money for 24 months before you can even get any revenue.
Yeah, because during this time, you have to pay the mortgage. Right? You have to pay all this stuff for 2 years. A ton of expenses, yeah. So I freak out a little bit, have a little bit of stress. Huge learning moment for me about, dealing with these kinds of numbers, with dealing with the type of infrastructure I was looking to build. Huge learning moment of not putting your identity in that and being able to kind of separate yourself from what you're doing and not be this guy who's building these things and dealing with all this money, but instead be Nate, I'm a man of faith, so be a child of God, and then be able to have bad things happen in the business and still be fine. So that was a big learning moment for me. But everything ended up good because I ended up selling the building. We lost a little bit, but the investors were down for my idea. Before I sold it, I found the building we're in now that we're leasing, which is a 10,000 square foot building, a little bit further out. It's in Dripping Springs. Honestly, worked out way better because it's a better building. Number one, we didn't have to build it ground up. We probably spent 3 months designing and building the support space, getting it soundproofed. But for the most part, it was like a 3-month thing. We got in. That came with its own challenges and stresses. But and we put up the volume. And I worked with View for the volume. They were another investor, helped me kind of finance some of the aspects of the technology and the panels and the computers and stuff.
So yeah, working with different people to overcome these challenges, working with View, my team, my investors, and just really figuring out like, this is a big thing we're trying to do. It turned from a 5,000 square foot. Well, it really turned from maybe using an old firehouse with a little psych wall in it to now we're a 17,500 square foot studio because we've got 2 buildings. We've got the largest LED wall in Texas. So it very quickly snowballed from, I want to get my foot in the door in the industry and have something to offer, to now I'm running one of the largest studios here. And it was just a crazy ride. Ride. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, and I mean, when one door closes after you got that call that you were going to have to wait 2 years and just sitting on money and tell your investors some bad news and stuff, that's definitely a door closing, slamming in your face.
Yeah.
But, if you just stay patient and persistent, and you kind of keep up that passion, like, you'll find another door to open. And it sounds like you'll opened up a great door.
Yeah, it's been wild, and it is exactly that. And it's kind of foreshadowing of how the business works now too, because it is such an expensive way to film when you're doing it at scale, right? So if you're taking it saves productions money, but only productions past a certain point. So what we're dealing with is almost always 6-figure productions, a lot of the times 7-figure productions. So there's a lot of doors slamming closed constantly because we're getting inquiries every single month, right? Of like, hey, we want to bring this production to you. And it's just large amounts of money that you either get, or all of a sudden one day they call and they're like, oh, we're moving the production to Atlanta. And it's like, boom, door closed. Yeah. And it's like, that was a significant amount of money that we just lost, a significant amount of recognition that we could have gotten by being attached to this project that we just lost. So in a way, it prepared me to be able to handle that. I think it's very similar to people who work jobs that are 100% commission. It's like, no, I got to go make things happen, or else when that door closes, another one's not going to open unless you go find another door. So it was good. I think I needed those lessons that the infrastructure part of it, the real estate part of it, taught me for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of like, as creatives, right? Like, I feel like you're probably like me, where we're kind of predominantly a creative, right? Like all I'm doing is thinking about creative ideas and stuff like that. But implementing those ideas is a very business mentality thing, right? So you have to kind of find this balance where you spend a lot of time thinking about creative ideas, and then on the other side of your brain, you have to figure out how to implement those ideas, right? And then you have to balance checkbooks, you have to pay invoices, you have to submit invoices, you have to pay your taxes, and like all that boring stuff that as a creator, we don't want to do. So how do you kind of balance that? I think the obvious answer that I hear so many people say is you delegate to people who are good at that type of stuff, right? People who are good at admin, you delegate. But how do you balance that?
Man, for me, I think being forced when I was in LA and with my feature, and even in film school, as a director, you only direct things you produce for like the first however many years you're directing, because you need to build up that portfolio. So I think producing, honestly, kind of teaches you business in a lot of ways. It's a different type of business. It's not something you need to sustain. It's like we need to put together basically a small company every time you make anything and see it through from pre-production to release. And so in a sense, I've started 30, 40 companies before Stray Vista, because every single project I ever directed, I needed to figure out how to get funding, figure out budgeting, figure out, the tax stuff, figure out how to hire people, how to be a manager, how to be a leader. So in a way, I think my business school was producing my own films, was producing my own work. And I've found lately that I think I enjoy that just as much as the creative. So I think I'm lucky in that way, where I don't look at that stuff and say like, I'd rather be writing, or I'd rather be composing a shot. I look at it and I'm like, this is part of it. This is part of what I want to do. My biggest inspiration is Walt Disney. And I think he's a great example of a very creative person who used business in a super creative way to create whatever he wanted. At the end of his life, he was building a city. You know what I mean? So I think I'm more wired, like what I'm going after isn't necessarily a fully creative thing. It's not fully business. It's not even a mix of just those two things. It's being a builder, like people say creator, and I think they narrow it down to like, you're the one with the camera. But I think being a creator is like just being a builder. You know, you're somebody that builds things, whether that's systems, whether that's work, whether that's infrastructure, whatever it is. It's I think that's what being a creator is. So I think part of it is the maintenance and creating those systems. And then you do hire the people that once the system is created, they keep it going. But
yeah, and you have to be a people person too.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of like those soft skills that you always hear about in school or like when you're growing up, or, you know, soft skills are important because you can't do it alone. How important was that? Like building a community and getting people around you to help you with this? Because this is a huge endeavor, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if I think about my experience building a studio, a lot of times it's very stressful, as you mentioned, but also it's kind of isolating. I feel like a lot of the stress is on my shoulders. And sometimes I have to remind myself to step back, take a big deep breath, and just remember that like I'm not alone. And I do have a support team. Yeah. How important is a support team when you're building something like a studio? Yeah,
man, the team is everything. The people you get in bed with is everything. Like your investors, if you're renting, the landlord, you know, everybody. So for me, I mean, part of it is when you're doing something this ambitious and this crazy, you need to convince people to follow you, and you need to inspire people. I think that's a better word than convince. You need to inspire people to follow you. And in order to do that, you got to believe in what you're doing more than anybody in the world. You can't have any doubts. You can't think like, oh, this might not work out, but let's try it, especially when you're looking for money. So I think that in the creation of the team, it was a lot of self-reflection and like, can I actually do this? And then when you get to the point of like, no, not only can I do this, I'm going to be the best at it, and I'm going to execute this idea that I have in my head better than anybody else could. I think the right people kind of start to come to you. So Ace, my virtual production supervisor, he helped build Full Sales Volume, and he is one of the most talented guys I've ever met in my life because he's a union gaffer. He's DP'd a bunch of projects, and he is a virtual production supervisor, which right now is one of the most niche skilled jobs in the country in the film industry. So super talented guy calls me up one day and he's like, hey, I heard what you're doing. I just spent 6 months or however long it was building and learning virtual production by building Full Sales Volume or helping them build it. I would like to come, work for you. So we worked out what that would look like. As a startup, it's hard to get those super skilled positions, but Ace being somebody that I knew at school, somebody that I respected, somebody who respected me, him seeing what I was doing out here, it was an easy choice for him to be like, this is somebody I respect. This is somebody that I want to work with, and there's an opportunity here to grow something with him. So it's really a blessing that that people like Ace saw what I was doing and just had a calling to come help it happen. Because it wasn't at any point until recently, until like the last 6 months, it wasn't oh, this is succeeding, I want to go join it. It was, this is an idea and I want to go help start it. And I think those are two different things. When you're building a team, it's a lot easier when you have a successful, brand, when you have a successful business to find employees. But I think it's a lot harder when all you have is an idea. Mm-hmm. So Ace, Aaron, my studio director, kind of same story. I met him through Corey Crumpacker, who's a director out here. And he just introduced me, was like, Aaron's super interested in getting into the film industry. He's super interested in XYZ, all the things that Aaron is good at. And we met up for lunch one day, and he was like, I don't know when it would be, but whenever you have a chance to hire somebody, here's what I can do for you. And I can do it really well. And he showed up one day while we were building, and he was like, hey man, like no pressure, hand me a broom though. Like whatever I need to do, I want to be a part of this. And a week later I hired him. So just guys like that, you know, they saw something that they believed in. I think that thing that they saw is bigger than me, and they wanted to be a part of it. And it's almost like nothing was going to stop them from being a part of it. So I feel extremely blessed that my team kind of came to me in a natural way. And I didn't like put out job postings. I didn't have to go search for the team. And the fact that I started a virtual production business without a virtual production supervisor is like a little bit crazy. And I'm very blessed and lucky that Ace came along when he did, because that's a nightmare position to find. And I didn't know that till after I hired Ace, when there's other studios calling me being like, hey, can you send Ace out to our studio? Our virtual production supervisor left to go work in LA on these massive projects. And it's like, oh, this is a really niche skilled job that nobody knows how to do. And one of the best in the country decided to come work with me. It's a super blessing. So
yeah. And real quickly, because it's very entertaining, or I say entertaining, it's cool to hear like the blending of these two industries that we find ourselves in, film and video game design in a way, right? So kind of what Ace does is, and I would love for you to go into more detail here, but like Ace kind of designs these scenes in a video game engine called Unreal Engine, which a lot of people are familiar with. He designs the scenes, and then the camera acts as a virtual camera as well. So the LED screen is changing depending on what the physical camera is doing, right?
Yeah.
So how does kind of how does Ace kind of manage all that?
Yeah, man. So like you said, it's basically you're blending live events, because the panels that we're using are the same panels that you see at concerts, just kind of higher resolution and more tuned for filming. And then video games, because we're using Unreal Engine. It's like the engine that Fortnite uses and a lot of other video games use. And then film, obviously. We're shooting it. The purpose of it is to create something. So those three industries, it's hard to find somebody like Ace who can manage knowledge in the actual hardware, the LEDs, the tracking systems, the video game engine, and the filmmaking side. And the fact that he started as a photographer and then moved into filmmaking and then moved into tech, it's like, I think that's the path that a virtual production supervisor needs to take, because we're shooting it for film or commercial or TV, that needs to come first. And then the tech stuff comes next. But at the end of the day, it's all for a film. So you can make a beautiful scene in a video game, but if it's not lit like a movie and it's not lit to match what you're doing in real life, it's not going to matter. So I think Ace's management of it really comes down to, he's very knowledgeable. And then number two, he puts the film first, right? He puts what's on the monitor before what's on his computer. So I think that's a big part of it. But it is a hard thing to manage, man. We recently hired a second VP Soup, Zach, who also went to Full Sail, and super talented producer, super talented director. Was just like, Unreal Engine reinvigorates me. It makes me excited about film again, because it's basically democratizing VFX. So he spent the last year and a half before coming to Stray Vista doing mocap in Unreal, just other things in Unreal. And he calls me one day. He's like, hey, man, I feel like I'm actually ready to come be a professional at Unreal Engine. So now Ace has a team that he's able to work with, and they kind of bounce back and forth between projects. But it is a tough thing to manage, man, because it's new too. There's nobody to call. There's no YouTube video to look up when something breaks.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a new thing.
Yeah.
Especially for like, if you're not a big Hollywood studio or making The Mandalorian or whatever.
Yeah.
Did they even make that in Hollywood?
Yeah, they made it in LA. I've been to that stage a couple times. Massive.
Nice. Yeah. It's like 360. It's like all the way around, right? Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah. So it's such a new thing that you're right. There's no YouTube videos. There's not many courses out there if you wanted to go to school and learn it. Not yet. I assume Full Sail will probably be one of the first to offer a course.
Yeah, they've got their wall, so I think they're already offering it, which is cool. But yeah, it's so new, and it's not like every wall's the same either. So we could have a problem, and we look up an answer in this studio, in Toronto or whatever, wherever somebody might have built one like we have, might have made a video about the problem we're running into. But then it's like they're using this processor, we're using this processor. Their panels are manufactured by this person and have the refresh rate of this, and ours are manufactured by this person with the refresh rate of this. They're using this tracking system. So it's not like virtual production is this thing like an ARRI camera where it's just like you go on B&H, you click request a quote, you get the quote, they send the camera, it's the same camera everybody has. It's like you need to find panels, you need to find a tracking system, you need to find servers, you need to find processors. So it's all these different things hodgepodge together that aren't really supposed to work together in the way that they do. And so it's tough to find any resources of how to fix things when they break. So you really do need that team that knows what they're doing.
Hey, real quick, thanks so much for listening. I just wanted to pop in here and say that it means a lot that you took time out of your day to listen to Beyond the Studio. So thank you so much. We've got a lot of fun stuff planned for this podcast. We have a lot of smart and talented people who have opened up their own studio. So if you found any value in here, I would love if you could like and share. And also if you have any tips or questions, send them to us. I'd love to get a conversation going on all these episodes of Beyond the Studio. So, okay. Thanks so much. You guys are awesome. We'll see you. So owning a studio, because a lot of people listening are probably thinking about starting their own studio, or they already own their own studio, or they're somehow involved in the process. How do you go about finding clients, especially in the early days? How did you go about getting your name out there and kind of getting people to pay you money to use your studio?
Yeah, man. I think, so one thing that was really cool about specifically doing virtual production is we did a press release about building the biggest virtual production wall in Texas. And from there, it was like my inbox was exploded with most production companies in Austin saying, hey, we're going to need to use you when you open up, like put us on your mailing list or whatever. So for us, it was joining at the right time in an innovative section of the industry and being the biggest, I guess. And it's like not this crazy business thing that I can tell you how to do, but 90% or more of our inquiries are inbound, or of our productions are inbound inquiries. And they heard about us through word of mouth. So it came to, being the first was big for us, being the biggest, and then humbly being the best. Because if we were the first and the biggest, but the first production came in, and one of our first productions was Google. If Google came in and was like, this sucks, then I don't think we would have gotten any more bookings. But they came in and were like, this was incredible. And for what we paid for it compared to what they pay for it in LA, it's like you're getting the same production value, if not, again, humbly better than some of these stages in LA. And it's because real estate here is so much cheaper, because, a lot of factors of Texas and why people love shooting in Texas. It's just a better place to be than out there. Why wouldn't I do it here? So then all these productions are kind of slowly calling us now and saying like, hey, we have this production, we're out of New York, but we want to come in and do it in Austin. So we're also bringing a lot of work to Austin, which is really cool. But I think my advice would be, if you are starting up, is just go everywhere and talk to everyone. So one of the key factors in our early success was, I think, Mindy Raymond and Heather Page have a consulting company called Shineco. And both of these women are incredibly connected and well-respected in the Austin film industry. Mindy was the head of, or part of TXMPA, which is an organization that helps get film incentives to Texas. So she was huge in the last session, going out and talking to different legislators and trying to get these film incentives. So through that and through everything else she does, she's very well known and very well respected in the industry, and same with Heather. So I hired them, the Shine Co., to kind of just get the word out, to invite us to different functions that were going on in the film industry. And we showed face to every single one. Aaron and I would show up to many, many, many events and basically just say like, hey, we're the virtual production guys. We're kind of new in town in the industry, and we're here to learn and we're here to help. And we're not here to, come in and change how Texas does things. Like, we're here to provide a new resource to Texas. And I think that approach for anybody doing a studio is the one you have to take, where what you're coming into is already an established ecosystem that works the way it works. And it has people that are working in it that are real people who are affected by these changes and everything. So going to them first and saying like, what do you need? Not here's what I can offer you. It's what do you need? And then figuring out how to fill that void. I think that that's what you need to do when you're starting a studio, because as soon as the first question you ask somebody is, hey, how can I help you? And then you come to them a month later and you're like, hey, I've solved your problem with this thing at my studio, or with this way that we do things, with this system, with this building, with this gear. I think that that's when they're like, cool, we'll book you. So I think if you're starting a studio, respect the place that you're going to build it in, respect the industry that already exists there, get connected to it, become a curious person, figure out what the need is in that place, and then be excellent at executing, fulfilling that need.
Yeah. One of your first clients there was Google. No
Yes.
pressure there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that exciting?
It was, man. Simu Liu was the actor in the commercial. So he was Shang-Chi, and he was recently Ken in Barbie, one of the Kens. So it was cool to see him too, because I had just watched Shang-Chi and I was like, oh, this is like a big production coming through here, and it's a month into opening the studio. Our very first production was Hannibal Buress, Paul Wall, and Danny Brown. It was a music video, which again, that's super cool because I grew up watching the Eric Andre show, and it's like, oh, there's Hannibal.
That's great.
Just rapping in my studio, and then Paul Wall comes in, he's got his grills on. But again, because we were such a unique studio, we got access to these larger clients first. But I think for most people, even doing virtual production now, because it's becoming more democratized, it's not going to be that way. We just got in at the right time. So I think just building up a client base of people you trust and becoming a partner, and not you want to be a partner, not just somebody who is a vendor one time. You know what I mean? You want to, instead of getting a large amount of cash maybe for the first one, create a partnership and hey, let's cut you this deal. Let's get you in. Let's show you how this works. Let's make sure that you like it. But because I'm giving you this deal, I expect you to bring X back, or I expect you to do these types of projects here. And if you do it well, they'll come back, because people remember being treated well. People remember what you did for them, the help that you gave them. So it came down to a lot of like, I'm not going to be super strict about rates and things at the beginning. What does your production have? This is a new technology. This isn't something that you've budgeted for yet. And come to me with any projects that you have, and we'll figure out how to make it work where I can cover my costs and whatever. And now we're to the point where our rates are our rates. And when you call us, it's like it's already budgeted in for most productions, because it's become a line item. Virtual production is like now a line item. Back a year and a half ago, it was not. People would come in and not have any idea what it was going to cost. So might have rambled a little bit there, but I think being helpful, being part of the community, those are the biggest things.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to being a people person.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we're all, we may be in the video production industry, or someone may be in the photography industry, or whatever kind of creative industry.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you're in the customer service industry, right? And if you don't give them good customer service, it doesn't matter how good your pictures look. If they had a bad time, they're not going to come back. They're going to be like, yeah, they're good pictures. They turned out well, but it was a terrible experience. The guy wasn't nice, whatever. So, yeah, at the end of the day, we're in the customer service business for sure.
Yeah. We recently did a shoot that was very stressful, but it was a super high revenue shoot. It was a long production, very big company that we did it for. And it was the most stress I've had for a production since, the stress I had when I was opening up the studio. And it felt so good when we wrapped because the head of that agency comes out with a bottle of champagne and they pop it and they're like, this was the greatest production experience we've had. And that we weren't just the studio for that one. We were actually producing it as well. Because we found that different agencies are now basically requiring, if they're going to do virtual production, they require a very experienced production company. So I had to create a production company as well. And through the connections I made the first year of operating business, it's like, okay, I know who to call to be on my production company side.
Yeah, you got your DP on call. Yeah.
Well, that and now I've got a full-time head of production who has done multiple projects on the stage. But anyway, so that big production that we were all super stressed about in a good way, not because we didn't think we could pull it off, just more like, okay, this is a big one. We gotta perform. I'm still getting emails, and this was like 4 months ago. I'm still getting emails from the client, the agency, and the crew being like, that was one of the best things we worked on, and what we made was beautiful. So I think that's awesome, man. And it comes down to the customer service aspect that like you're saying. The thing that people are commenting on the most when they email us to reflect on what we just went through together is we had fun shooting it. We were all on top of our game. And we were treated well. And I think if you can do those three things, you'll get all the business you need.
Yeah, for sure. So you're a director, right? You consider yourself a director?
Yes.
Yeah. And now a studio owner.
Yes.
So how has opening up a studio, or has it, I guess I want to ask, has opening up a studio helped your directing career flourish? Has it added challenges to your directing career? Has it opened up more doors?
I haven't I directed like 3 promos for the studio last year, which was super fun. I'll answer it in a couple parts. Part 1, resources. It gives me more resources. Obviously, I own the means of production, so the cost of making something goes significantly down. It's basically just opportunity cost at this point. If I'm directing something in the studio, it means I can't rent it out. Or we can't, if I'm producing something, it means my head of production can't be producing something else. So basically everything at this point is just opportunity cost when I make something instead of cash, which is great. So that's helpful. One thing that's not helpful though is I'm very busy. I'm an extremely busy person now. I wasn't when I was a full-time writer. And so the amount of things I can direct versus the amount of things I want to direct is like crazy. So I don't direct that much anymore. And if I do, it kind of needs to have some sort of utility for the business because I can't just have my team, my employees go make vanity projects for Nate. We got to make stuff for Stray Vista. So it's a little different now, but I would say the biggest benefit of owning a studio and also being a creative is you get to watch directors come through your building and you get to like study them. So recently, Anthony Mandler came through the studio to direct a commercial for Starbucks, and he's directed Taylor Swift, Drake, Rihanna, like incredible director. If you don't know him, look him up. And getting to sit in the studio and talk with him and watch him direct, it's like that's an opportunity that I wouldn't be able to have if I didn't own the studio. To be able to literally just sit down and shadow somebody that is that experienced in directing. So I think that long term, these 5 years that I'm, building the company are going to be extremely valuable. But I don't think I'm going to take a stab at directing anything big for like the next 5 years because I think now is a time to learn. I think now is a time to build up resources, and then when the time comes to make some Stray Vista originals. I'm there for it. But
Yeah, and y'all do some shorts with whenever Unreal Engine comes out with like a free model. Is that right? And
we
then
did
y'all
that
kinda
for a
use
while,
that
yeah.
as an excuse to make like a fun little short film that helps promote Stray Vista.
We did do that for a while. We haven't had time to do that. Thankfully, we haven't had time to do that because we've been booked. But yeah, it's fun stuff, man. It's cool. It's cool being able to make projects that feel huge because the LED wall can take you pretty much anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can do 5 location changes
Yeah.
in a day fairly easily,
Yeah.
right? Whereas in the real world, obviously, you wouldn't be able to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you did tons of planning for your studio. How much planning? Just give us a ballpark. Like, did it take you years? You got to figure out the budget. You got to get all these things in place, right?
Yeah. So I basically going from I want to do a psych wall to do a volume took about 3 months because I got a phone call when I announced to my friends, my network, that I was going to open a studio. I got a phone call from a guy who was like, "Hey, I can get you LED panels really cheap because I know a manufacturer and we can build a volume together." And again, similar with like a lot of things, you entertain these ideas and then you do your research and you figure out if that's good for you or not. And this specific way of going about things, I don't think was good for me because I was going to have to learn all of it myself. Yeah, I could get all the hardware, but there's a difference between getting really cheap hardware, good, but cheaper hardware, and then having to figure out how to put it together and getting a turnkey solution. So after I got that call, I hadn't even thought of virtual production, but I got that call and I was like, maybe this could make sense. So then I just kind of started researching other stages and I called View, who's got a number of stages in the country. And this was all 2.5 years ago. So it was about a year between idea to start. And View was opening up their Nashville stage and they were like, "Hey, why don't you just come to the opening party and we can talk to you when you're here." And I was sold pretty instantly because I was watching them open up a studio that looked almost exactly like the one I wanted to open. And it worked. And I was like, if you can come do this with me, then, we worked out whatever the deal looked like. But that took about 3 months to work that out. And then they came in. I handled all the infrastructure. And then they came in and handled the tech. And then when Ace came on a month before View started installing the studio, like the virtual production stuff, he basically took over from there. And yeah, man, it took about 1.5 years between idea to Hannibal Buress's filming in the studio.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wild. Even with all that planning, was there any kind of surprises that popped up? I know one surprise was the first location that you tried to get. Were there any other surprises?
Yeah, there was a lawsuit in there that I don't think I can talk about. That was a big surprise and a huge pain. It just had to do with infrastructure. There was some construction stuff that happened. And yeah, man, I don't know. It was the busiest. It was busier than I am now because I didn't have my employees on yet. It was just me, and I didn't have money for an architect this time around because I spent that architect money on the first building. So I designed the whole new one myself. That was cool because I grew up wanting to be an architect, so getting the opportunity to actually design a space like this was awesome, but also difficult. And tons of challenges, man. I can't necessarily talk about a lot of the specific ones because it has to do with people, and I don't, at the end of the day, I'm grateful for everybody that helped, but there were some, hiccups and things here and there.
Yeah, and it's, since opening up my studio, I have been more stressed than I've ever been in my entire life. Like I grew up pretty chill and pretty stress-free. I was always the carefree kid, the funny kid that didn't have a care in the world. Chill was probably my MO. And now the past few years have definitely been more stressful. Granted, I have kids now, and I didn't have kids before. So a lot of that is probably attributed to the kids. But on the business side as well, it's a lot of stress.
It is.
And it's a lot of staying up late sometimes, stressing about stuff, waking up early, stressing about stuff. How do you get through that? Because sometimes the stress and failures or the fear of failure, sometimes that can cripple you and make you want to quit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but how do you kind of get through that stress?
Have you slept here yet?
No. Like I said, I have kids, so
Yeah.
I have a higher responsibility where I have to be home. Yeah.
There was a period where Ace and I were living at the studio because we just had to solve problems before the production. But man, no, the stress is, I kind of touched on it earlier, talking about identity and just making sure that mentally you're in a spot to take risks. But for me, like, I'm going to bring up my faith again. For me, it's all my faith, right? So knowing who I am first and foremost is a child of God, a disciple of Christ. I think that is like the only thing that keeps me grounded, because if I put my identity into being a studio owner, into being a director, into being a member of the film industry, I've seen that destroy people. Like when I was in LA, that destroyed a lot of people. I saw people pack up their bags and go back to Idaho or Iowa or Wisconsin or wherever they were from and never touch film again and work at gas stations because they got crushed. Because everything about them that they liked was tied to this industry that chewed them up and spit them out. So if I lost the studio, if this industry chewed me up and spit me out, said we're not going to work with Nate anymore, I would be very sad. I would have a very hard time, but it would no longer be tied to who I am as a person. When I introduce myself, I don't say, hey, I'm Nate, I'm a studio owner. I say, hey, I'm Nate, I'm a human being, you know? Yeah. So I think that sounds easy, but when you're doing cool things, the way that people react, it's very easy for it to become your identity because it's the thing people want to talk to you about, right? When you go spend time with friends and you own a studio where you film stuff, or just being in this industry, people like talking about it. They like asking questions. They want to know more. So it can very easily become like, if I don't have this, what do they care about me for?
Yeah, and it's important to remember that like none of this leads us like by itself doesn't lead us to happiness.
Yeah.
Right. Especially, I mentioned I have kids, especially now that I'm a father, like that kind of puts life in a completely different perspective. Yeah. That no podcast can do, no reading books can do when you actually are a dad. And when I leave the studio, I, put on my dad hat and I go home and I be a dad, and that's the most fulfilling thing in the world. And so you're right. If the studio were to close down, it'd be sad. There'd be some tears shed, but I get to go home and jump on the trampoline with my kids. Yeah. Ride bikes with my kids.
And they would have no idea.
They'd have no idea. Yeah. Yeah.
Because they don't I think that's a good illustration of what I'm talking about. Is your identity to them is you're their dad. So they wouldn't care what your job was at all, I don't think. And I think you need to feel that way about yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
But it is difficult, especially when, like you said, I am extremely stressed all the time, not to a level where it inhibits me from doing anything. But if I think about the next year of overheads and how many productions we need to fill those up, and I understand that most of our productions call us a month, maybe a month and a half before they shoot, it's like, okay, I've got this small window into how well we're doing, and we're doing really well, but how do I know what's going to happen in September, October? And we really don't in the way that we're working. Like you're not going to have a production for a commercial call you and be like, hey, we're thinking of filming this commercial in December of 2024. Right. It's like, hey, we got this commercial. Our dates are 1 month from now. And then you get the features. But to be honest with you, the narrative stuff is not that far out either. You'd think it would be. But I think that they plan their feature and then they call us when they're ready to find a stage, but it's not necessarily like booking out super far in advance. So
yeah, it's tough. It's not like booking a venue for a wedding. Right. Because weddings you plan out way in advance. Yeah.
My parents own a wedding venue. They're booked out 5 years. I'm like, that must be nice.
That's crazy.
That must be nice.
Yeah, because that for the next 5 years, you got some cash flow coming in. Yeah. We're the same way. We're about 2 weeks out. 3 to 4 weeks if we're lucky. Very rarely do we get an inquiry where, yeah, they're like, hey, in 4 weeks, I'm going to be in town, yada, yada.
Right.
So, and again, I think it goes back to that word you keep bringing up, faith.
Yeah.
Right. You got to have faith in your business. You got to have faith in the process. You have to trust the process, trust this business that you've created, this system that you've made, right? You just kind of have to sit back and have faith that it's all going to work out.
Yeah, and position yourself well. I think being well positioned is the most important, because I could be sitting here waiting for something to happen, but if I'm not spending time making sure that when it happens, we're going to be able to achieve it, we're going to be excellent at achieving it, then we get the call and it's like, you either are too nervous to say yes because it's too big of an ask, it's a bunch of money, but why would you say yes to something you're not confident in selling? So we've turned certain productions away when we were in the first year because I was like, no, I don't want them to come have a bad experience. I think you should go to a stage that's been open longer. We don't have to do that anymore, thankfully, because we've positioned ourselves to be able to take those jobs. But one bad production in virtual production, people will write it off forever. Like, oh, that was a waste of time and money. We'll just go do it on a green screen, or we'll go do it in on a location. So for me, it was like, I need to position myself as excellent. So we're not going to take any production that I can't be 100% sure that they'll get their money's worth. And now we're in that position. So it's been a lot easier when we do get inquiries to just say yes to everything.
Yeah. Do you regret
But it
saying
took a long
no
time.
to some of those big clients at the beginning?
No, because I don't want anybody to feel like I ripped them off. And it's a new technology, so there's already a level of hesitancy. And is this really going to work? And if they come in and their answer isn't emphatically a yes, then I failed. So I'm glad I protected my team against that as well, because like if I'm the business guy, I'm the sales guy, and I'm just like throwing them a bunch of stuff and they're like, we haven't figured this out yet, nobody's figured this out yet, then what am I doing to my team? That's bad leadership. So it's a lot of conversations with them too. It's like, if I sell this, can we make sure that it's above and beyond what people are expecting? So I think that's super important, but it is stressful because you're turning down a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes in my studio, people will come in with an idea and they're like, hey, I want to shoot this here. I want to check out the space. Let me talk to you, see if we can shoot it. And sometimes it's immediately apparent that the answer is no. Like the answer is like, no, this space is too small, or, it's too big, or like whatever. So sometimes you're right. The responsible thing is to simply turn away business, but, like we said, closing one door usually opens up another.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say it's necessarily turning away business. It's like, it's just explaining your capabilities. And for us, it's less explaining our capabilities. It's more explaining the capabilities of the technology, right? If somebody wants to come in and do a Goodfellas tracking shot through a restaurant, it's like, yeah, we could get a treadmill and we could have the screen move behind, but it's not going to look good. So
you might as well just do it on location.
Just go. Yeah, that's one of the things you got to do on location. So there are now ways that you can do things like that. But at the time, it was like, why are you thinking about this for an LED wall? It's not what I said. It's just more of like, I think as an expert in virtual production, this isn't a shot, or this isn't a scene, or this isn't a commercial for virtual production. And that is tough, because we could take the money, give them a decent version of it, and then blame them for, well, you should have known virtual production can't do this. But they're trusting our expertise. So I think that there's a responsibility there that we have to uphold, and it's more important than the paycheck we would get from it.
Yeah, for sure. You got to be a good partner through and through. What's kind of the biggest piece of advice you'd give anyone who's wanting to open up a studio? And I know some people are going to, probably most listening are not going to be opening up a virtual production studio.
Sure.
I think that's a very niche thing. Some people may be opening up a photography studio or some sort of creative studio, but what is one piece of advice that they can take with them?
Man, I think it's important to know your market, to know its needs, and then to work as hard as you can to build whatever you're building to cater to those needs. Even if in your head you're like, I really dream of my studio having this thing. If your market doesn't need it, wait until it's financially responsible to do that, and then it will just know that thing that you want to do will be for you, and you might be able to make some money off of it, but really focus on the community that you're building the studio for. This is a brick and mortar business that we're in. This is a building. So if they need it in New Mexico, but they don't need it here, then don't build it here. You know what I mean? So I think that's the most important thing, and in order to do that, you need to be a part of the community, and you need to understand the infrastructure needs. You need to understand who's here, who's creating, what are they creating, and then just really make your studio the best at those things.
Yeah. Good stuff. What's next for Stray Vista? What do you have on the horizon?
Yeah, man. So we are hoping to be more on the production services side of things. So different production companies have fears, different agencies have fears when it's coming to virtual production because they've never done it before. They're unaware of the technology. So what we really want to do is be more than just a studio that people come to. We also want to be able to be the experts in that area. So if there's X% of the production that the production company believes is dependent on the knowledge that a producer would have that has done virtual production before, we take that on. So we're kind of becoming more of a production services / production company. So the future, hopefully, is that more and more productions are under that, where we're able to help in more ways than just opening the doors. And then building what we have. We just recently got another studio, so we have a 7,500 square foot soundstage right next to our virtual production studio. That's going to be hosting a TV show this summer. So hopefully moving more into the traditional production side of things too, because at the end of the day, what Stray Vista is a filmmaking company that happens to have a tool that is virtual production. But what I want to build this into is just a full studio. I want to be making our own content. I want to be helping other people make their content. I want to be, I don't like the word content, so I'm going to say films. Yeah, we want to build it into a compound you can come to, and whether we're the ones behind the creative or somebody brings creative to us, we're able to take it from idea to distribution. That would be the goal in the next 10, 15 years. But for now, we're just going to keep getting better at what we do, be excellent providers in the service of virtual production and stage rental, and hopefully start moving more into the production side of things.
Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah, man, it's great. I haven't checked it out in person. I would love to.
You got to come out.
Check it out.
You got to come out. Yeah.
Well, it's a great thing you're doing for Austin. You know, you're putting Austin on the map even more than Austin already was. You know what I mean, for virtual production.
Yeah, thank you, man.
So good for you. You're an inspiration to a lot of people out there.
Thank you, man.
Yeah. Thanks for coming. How can people find you on the interwebs?
Yeah, go find Stray Vista, not me. It's at Stray Vista on Instagram. Nice. And if you're gonna find me on LinkedIn, Nate Strayer. I post mostly about the studio stuff. So
yeah, nice. Well, good stuff. Thanks,
cool.
Nate.
All right.